Mind is what you see.
Welcome to The Founder's Mind. This is your host, Adam Muchler. On this episode, you'll hear from Kara Goldin, the founder and CEO of Hint. Be sure to listen throughout the episode and learn why Kara started her beverage company over 10 years ago, how she's grown it, and what's driving her towards other products like sunscreen. I'll give you a hint, it's personal.
Well, let's zoom into Hint for a second. It started out as a water beverage company, and in recent history, you've moved into sunscreen.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
so
even within your brand and your business, there's an evolution of seemingly divergent products.
Yeah. So, I mean, you're absolutely right. So I started this company a little over 13 years ago to get myself to drink water. I grew up in Arizona where I should have been a water drinker. I aspired to be a water drinker. I liked people who drank water, but I just wasn't one of those. I just always drank diet soda. And I didn't really think that there was all that much wrong with me drinking diet soda. But what I did see was that, the diet soda always got me to crave like other things. So I'd always want a piece of candy or a stick of gum, or I just constantly be nibbling. And now I look back on and a lot of the research around diet sweeteners has shown this too, that it just causes people to actually get hungrier. But what I found was that I ultimately came to this conclusion that diet soda probably wasn't so great for me when I had developed terrible adult acne. And I never even had adult acne when I was a teenager, but I got this adult acne. And then I found that I was had gained a bunch of weight over the years. It wasn't all at once, but it was just over the course of a bunch of years. I just continued to gain weight. And then I also had really low energy. And, there were lots of, people who were helping me sort of blame lots of different things on why this was occurring. Everything from, having a bunch of babies too close to one another to, working and being on planes all the time and, all these different issues. And then finally, I just decided I should just really clean up my diet. And it was relatively easy for me to do that with the food because I never felt like I was eating that much, junk. I wasn't eating 12 cupcakes a day or, 3 bags of Cheetos every day. I mean, that just wasn't sort of part of my diet. But what I found was the consistent thing that I had literally the most frequency with every single day was diet soda. And so I was drinking 8 to 12 diet sodas a day.
So you were keeping them in business.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like a lot. I think Coca-Cola executives call me a heavy user, which that's fine. Right. But I wasn't the only one that was drinking that. When you talk to people who drink tons of diet soda, I mean, that's how they sort of describe it but no one ever thinks because there's this word diet that they actually think that they're doing the wrong thing, right? It's sort of
totally.
It's an excuse. It's a label that is actually telling people that it's fine, right?
Yeah.
Somewhere along the way, we've changed, when you're learning vocabulary words and the word diet is kind of like a negative thing. And somewhere along the way, we sort of shift our mindset to actually believe that it's a positive thing, that it's actually we buy food that is diet, right? Because we think that it will keep us healthy, and anyway, not sort of dramatically shift things in any way. So
you can do a lot of magic. You can do a lot of magic with branding and labels.
Yeah. And the brain, I mean, I wish I had zillions of dollars to sort of help me understand why the brain, where's the crossover where we can, really pinpoint when people start to believe that diet is good for them, that, vitamins are good for them, that, it's not a negative, but it turns into sort of a positive if they embrace those things that are marketed to them that are called, these words in some way. So anyway, so that was sort of me. I had sort of fallen into this trap. And then finally one day I just decided, because I didn't really understand the ingredients, not just the diet thing, but also the ingredients. There were over 30 ingredients in the diet soda that I was drinking. And so I decided, I'm just going to like put it to the side and drink plain water. And when I did that, I was really bored with plain water. I was like, as I said, I always aspired to drink plain water. I would line up 8 glasses of water on the counter and not go to bed at night until I had like had all 8 glasses of the water.
That must have been really relaxing.
Yeah. Like I just thought like, why is it such a chore for me to like want to drink water? And so finally I started slicing up fruit and throwing it in water and, really like seeing that it like just by doing that, it was a pleasant experience and I actually was on board. And then, so I did that. And then 2.5 weeks after just changing that in my diet. And again, like I wasn't like, there wasn't that much from my diet standpoint to change, but it was like this diet soda thing, which I just thought like, I don't know. It's like, we'll see what happens. So I changed and then I lost over 20 pounds in 2.5 weeks. And then in 6 months, I lost over 50 pounds. I mean, it was crazy. Like it was like the weight was just kind of dropping off. And then I really started to dig into like why this was. And
that's wild.
Then
by the way.
And so not only the weight issue, it was really dramatic, not only the weight issue, but also, my skin had changed significantly and my, just my energy levels were way up. And I just thought like, what happens when people like go to doctors and they say like, you have whatever, you're overweight or you're, what ends up happening to probably more people where they hear you're obese or you've got cholesterol issues or like you've got type 2 diabetes or high blood pressure or whatever, you sort of like hear that and you're kind of like, la, 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 la. Like, I don't really want to hear that kind of stuff. Like I've heard this from friends where it's like, you don't really want to own it. You kind of get scared for a minute and then you just think like, oh, okay, well, I don't know, maybe I'll just like not really pay attention or I'll try and do something about it. Or, even better, maybe I'll actually get something that's going to be a pharmaceutical drug that's going to help me to actually, get better. Like we're not willing to put the work into actually figuring out, is there something that I'm doing in my everyday life that could actually, change the outcome. And so what I saw with
the distinction in the word change and challenge is pretty slight, and I think that's where people struggle, right? Change is challenging.
Yeah. And so what I saw was that just by changing like what I was drinking every day, I saw really great results. And even though I had been to a doctor prior trying to figure out like, why am I getting this acne? Why am I, feeling really sluggish? Like, why do I have all this extra weight on me that I can't get off? Like all of these I asked, and it was like, I was, all these doctors were more than willing to sort of give me some sort of, drug to change these things. But then I thought, what it really is me just paying attention more and actually making some simple changes. And, and again, like, losing this much weight off of diet soda might not be what happens for everybody. But for me, I was actually seeing like this crazy dramatic shift. And I thought if I could actually launch a product, like get everybody access to water with like raspberries or lemon or whatever it is in it, whatever, makes them happy and gets them to drink water and gets them to sort of experience what I've experienced, we might not even be talking about a national healthcare system, or we might not even be talking about a choice of, going on like, medication for acne or not acne. And, it's like simple things like that, I really realized just by getting myself to enjoy water again, could actually really, really change the outcome. So that's what I really viewed, what we were doing with Hint as, not as starting a beverage company. The beverage company was the tool to get healthier for me. And it was actually allowing me to sort of share, that mission with lots of other people. And then a couple of years ago, I was, just running a growing company. Things are going super well. I've got this dry spot on my nose, and I find out that I have skin cancer on my nose.
Yeah.
And really sucks. And, I finally went back to my doctor and got the skin cancer removed. And, she asked me the question, how much sunscreen are you wearing on your face? And, I'm wearing foundation, which, a lot of women wear, but makeup during the day. And I said, it's always got SPF in it. And, I didn't want to wear other foundation or other sunscreen underneath my foundation because I was like, it messes up the color of the foundation. And finally she said, well, that's obviously not working out really well. And so you should really get serious about wearing sunscreen. And, the reality is growing up in Arizona, I probably did a lot of damage a lot earlier on in my life that I can't do anything about now. So finally, after this happens, and I'm healing and I'm like, okay, I'm going to wear sunscreen now. I go to my local CVS and I see the sea of sunscreens and I decide, okay, I'm going to wear it, but which one? And I look at chemical-based sunscreens versus mineral-based sunscreens. And what I learned is that, mineral-based sunscreens for me made me itch. I didn't really like the color that it left on my skin. Oftentimes it made things sort of bluish. And then the chemical-based sunscreens, I started to question okay, everybody thinks chemical-based sunscreens are really bad, but it's not that they're chemical-based sunscreens. It's that there's certain chemicals that are not that great. I mean, if you look at the word chemical, it's kind of like the word diet in maybe a different way where people think, oh, chemicals bad. And it's like water's a chemical. There's lots of chemicals that are actually pretty good, right? And so we just have to sort of tame our brain a little bit to kind of focus on what is good and what's not really good. I started to dig into the ingredient list, and I found after doing some research that I knew about parabens, but that those were not so great to have on your skin. But oxybenzone is an ingredient in over 90% of sunscreens, and I just decided after reading some research that I didn't really want oxybenzone in my sunscreen. Oxybenzone, the research that I found was that it was approved by the FDA in 1976, even though the Center for Disease Control said that it might not be so good for you and that it may actually exacerbate precancer cells living under the skin. And I'm like, well, that's bad. And who knows if they have skin cancer until it's those cells under your skin have actually come forward. And so I, started to look at, could I actually develop a sunscreen without oxybenzone? And so I, went back to my kitchen where I developed Hint and decided to start to develop the sunscreen. I had no idea what I was doing, just like I didn't have any idea what I was doing with the water. And then found out from a friend who used to work at L'Oreal that I needed to get the FDA approval for the product. So I applied for that, and that took a little longer because the FDA actually called and said that they were surprised that when they asked for what is the product scented with, I said real fruit, and so they had to put it through additional shelf life testing because most sunscreens use fragrances, and so crazy learning.
When you started Hint, what gave you the impression? What was the driving force to say, I think I can make a dent here? Maybe I can make more than a dent. I mean, what was that thing that said, yeah, I'm going to be the new kid on the block against Pepsi, Coca-Cola? I'm sure Powerade and Gatorade are were on the radar. I don't know if, I think they've rolled up into other companies now, but 13 years ago.
Yeah, I didn't really think about it that way. I was really thinking about it for myself and thinking I wish I had a product like this on the market. And then people would actually see me drinking it, my home version of Hint. And then they started to be interested and start to ask me questions about it. And so I thought like, oh, wow, people actually want to give me like time to discuss what I've developed. I'm not asking them for time. They're wanting to research and, search out more information on sort of what I'm talking about most of the waters that were out there were sweetened with something. I'm talking about like the vitamin waters and the flavored waters that were out there. And so people were like, I never really thought about that those things had lots of sugar and sweeteners in it. And so, once I actually decided to develop the product, I thought, okay, I'm going to get it in to the store. And, I sort of didn't even think about it as like, I'm going to go sell it. And then once I sell it, I'm going to go raise money. I was fortunate to be able to sort of do a small batch of this product and relatively cheaply, go and actually get it in the market and see if people wanted it. But pretty quickly, I realized that, we sold 10 cases that we had dropped off at our local Whole Foods. I had gotten a guy that was stocking the shelves to give me a little bit of space because he was pretty interested in the fact that, the product vitamin water that they had been stocking had sort of tricked him into believing that it was healthier than it was. And so I really saw within 24 hours that we had sold 10 cases. And you have to understand, I didn't even tell people I was doing this company. I'd been a tech executive and everybody kept asking me, there's this great job at Google and you should go and talk to them about it. And I was kind of like, oh, okay. I mean, I was just not, for whatever reason, I can't really explain it. I wasn't super interested in kind of doing another tech job. Not to say that I wouldn't go back into tech. It's just like, I had a great run in tech and I just thought, I don't know, this is kind of what interests me right now.
So was Hint, was it a side hustle or was it?
Yeah.
Was it separate? Were you working at a tech company at the time or?
No, so I had left AOL. I had left actually after I had had my third child and, technically actually my second child. And then I got pregnant really fast. And so I ended up being in sort of transition because they, I went out shortly after that on maternity leave and then they were selling, basically AOL was being sold to Time Warner and sort of, it was a crazy, crazy time. And so it was part of this whole transition team. So I was sort of working on that. And then I just decided, you know what, it's kind of a good time for me to
step away,
disconnect and step away. I mean, I had been managing a team and then getting back into managing a team. So I was sort of going through my own transition, trying to figure out what I wanted to do next. It wasn't negative. It was just kind of like, okay, what am I going to do next? But just to answer to your original question about what did I see? I think I saw initially was just that, the customer was really buying into it. I mean, I was able to develop it relatively cheaply and then see that customers wanted it too. And when I sold 10 cases, I knew that it wasn't my friends that were being nice to me and going out and buying it because they didn't even know that I developed it. And instead, I just thought, I'd been selling a service for so long, AOL, and now I have a physical product. And I thought, no way. I got it into my favorite grocery store and, people are actually buying it. That's crazy, right? It was just a game to me. And then suddenly I saw wow, people are really liking it. And that's pretty cool. So,
I really, what I'm hearing and there's a parallel for me in this podcast actually, is that when you pursue something at a very sort of deep level where there's an interest, you're passionate about it, you care deeply about it, and you just say, I'm going to do this thing and I'm just going to see how it evolves. And you really care about it and you really put that, to your point, you've written a lot of articles, passion, perseverance, persistence, patience, the 3 or 4 P's that you had out there on one of your articles. One of the things that I'm always curious about, and I'm sure there are a lot of lessons that have come up, but is there something that really stands out that you've learned in the journey with Hint that sticks with you as you move forward with future products or future sort of projects within the organization? A lesson that you've picked up?
I think, I would say that you can gain information from almost anyone and anything. And so you just sort of have to be very, very aware of lots of different things around you. So I would say that, I probably see myself gaining the most, learnings from outside of my industry, which is like really counter to what many entrepreneurs who I talk to in all different industries, they're always sort of thinking and talking about, their competition. And while I'm very aware of the competitive landscape, it's not sort of how I, think about how this company will grow. Like I really am a big believer that you have to, like the best entrepreneurs sort of like look at, I look at into other industries that are doing stuff that I think is interesting, whether it's, the beauty industry or, now that I'm in the sunscreen industry, I look closer at that, but I also look at things like, companies like Warby Parker or tennis shoe companies or, things that are totally not what people think that beverage companies are looking at, because I look at models and I look at how did they stand out. And I look at, I look at things like pop-ups, for example, which is sort of like the hot topic. I mean, people are like, wow, like a beverage company having a pop-up. I mean, like, what are you going to do? Like sample water? And I'm like, yeah, but we're actually going to, we're going to do a lot of other things too. And, we're going to sell our product too, but we're just going to create an experience. And it's just like, it's more of a place where people can learn more about us as like why we did this, and sort of a place for us to be able to write kind of more information than maybe you can do on a shelf talker inside of a grocery store. I mean, that's kind of the thinking. And has anyone else done that in the beverage industry? No. I mean, we're like one of the first people to really do that kind of stuff. And then obviously, we're pretty big on social media too. So it's an opportunity for us to do fun things where if you come into it's not a pop-up, it's actually looks like a pop-up, but it's a permanent structure or store. You can come in and you can swing on the swing, and you can take a picture where you can post it on Instagram or other social media. And so I feel like there's no one way to do things, I guess is what I'm saying. And I think that the biggest lesson that I've learned is, be open to sort of looking outside and really trying to find uniqueness in different models and, with different, I look at other founders and, I like listening to them. I like hearing them on podcasts. I like, I read a lot, like that sort of stuff, really helps me to kind of, spend time thinking about, different ways of doing things. Because I think at the end of the day that if you're not able to stand out in a consumer's mind, then it's really, really difficult to actually get traction. And I feel like it's just, you almost become just another spoke in the wheel versus actually being a totally unique structure that just does things differently. And so I think that the more you can focus as a, founder on finding not only your uniqueness, but your company's uniqueness, that will really help you to stand out.
And you seem to be proving it, with what you're working on and what you're creating. I think that's a really great segue. Also talking about listening to other founders. Who's a founder that you admire and why? And we won't hold you to saying this is the only founder you admire, but just a founder that comes to mind.
I have so many. I mean, if you walk into my office, you'll see, a lot of people use them now, but Steve Jobs has always been somebody that, for me, just like really kind of weathered the storm in so many ways. And, I sort of, I never worked with him. I worked for one of my companies long time ago that I worked for was an idea of his that was a CD-ROM product that was basically like pushed out of Apple because they decided not to work on it. Not that Steve didn't want to work on it or think it was a good idea, but because it just, was going to take a while to incubate some people inside of Apple that ultimately ended up pushing it out or taking it on outside of Apple. But I would say that, him for just his vision and his, ability to actually stay focused and put stakes in the ground around a brand and, be willing to also, really keep going towards that goal versus actually wavering. I mean, the number of people that I've seen who have launched brands in lots of different categories and read about them who have, started off one way and then as they've taken money from, different places or brought in, new leadership or however you want to look at it, they've done things that maybe they didn't really want to do, but other people wanted to do who for some reason had control over what they wanted to do. I mean, that just is usually a bad idea, right? Like, it's like, you've got to figure out like who you are as a brand. I mean, we know that, Hint, as far as beverages are concerned, we're about unsweetened flavored water, right? That doesn't mean that we can't go into carbonation. Which we have. It doesn't mean that we can't go into caffeination, which we have, but we don't sweeten any of our products. That's our promise to the consumer. And then as we go into different categories, I mean, we don't have ingredients like oxybenzone. We don't have ingredients like parabens. It's like, we put stakes in the ground around those ingredients, and we're not going to sit there and trick the consumer into thinking that we're an oxybenzone-free company, for example, and then we go stick it in our like lip balms. Like, people do that, a lot. And it's just not who we are going to be. We're looking to develop a relationship with the customer and become a trusted brand. And so I think that that's where, like, I see Steve, like, was somebody that, really said, like, we want to make products better. We want people, like, we want to think ahead of what people feel like they need. So I would say he's probably, somebody that, I really, I really think was a true unique, founder in his own right. And I would have to say, two other people, sadly one who is no longer here, but Andy and Kate Spade. I mean, I think that those guys in particular, I remember meeting with Andy ages ago and talking to him about Hint, and he has an ad agency in New York. And I was lucky enough to see the brand book behind Kate Spade. And I remember when Kate first started, she actually went to Arizona State where I had gone as well. And she was a few years older than me, but I can't say I really knew her, but I'd met Andy a few times before and know his brother Dave. And anyway, it was interesting because he really believed that, it all started with the black bag as far as Kate was concerned, but he thought it was going to be so difficult to, for those of you who don't know, like the Kate Spade product, it all started with a black handbag, and that's all they had for like a couple of years. And then they branched out to different colors and doing other things. But he basically said, like, I can't control my destiny. And this is what his brand book said. I can't control my destiny if I basically rely on the Bloomingdale's and the Macy's of the world to basically say, you're going to only have this much space. And so he decided very early on to actually build a store that was really spoke to, this is what the promise is of Kate. And this is like the whimsical nature and sort of the fun colors and, things that, the fun fashion of kind of like a 50s-ish kind of, stuff that she really like embodied. I mean, that was really what he really wanted people to know about the brand. And so it was a very bold move. It was, I would say it was one of the first brands outside of major department stores that I certainly remember that kind of made, that shift. And frankly, when Apple decided to build their stores, it was the first thing that I thought of when I heard that Apple was going to build stores. I thought like, wow, this is super crazy. And then I thought about, what Andy had done. And I thought, I don't know, it's like, it's not that crazy. I mean, it's like they're relying on the Best Buys and the, Circuit Cities of the world to actually, show what they really, what's the meaning and what's the why behind the product. And if they've got to pay millions of dollars to do that, they've constantly got to be fighting to figure out like how it's being merchandised. Why don't they just buy their own, set up their own stores to do that? So I think from the standpoint of doing things differently, I think that, the Spades really did that as well, and very admirable.
I love that. And it, I find things that people label as crazy, mostly because it makes them uncomfortable. Only time will tell if it's a good idea. Obviously, Kate Spade, has had a ton of success, and Apple's the most valuable brand in the world for market cap. So we can say that they've made some pretty good decisions over the years, with the foundation of Steve Jobs and since then with Tim Cook. I have a soft spot for Apple because I worked there for 7 years in retail. And
oh wow,
yeah. So just listening to you talk to Steve Jobs, I have a very biased and agreeable opinion of him with your view.
Yeah,
Kara, I really appreciate you having
totally.
and having on the Founder's Mind. I wish we could talk for hours, but we can't.
Yeah, definitely. It was super, super fun. And I appreciate you reaching out and definitely, keep us posted on when this is posting.
I will. And it should be obvious. You Google Kara Goldin, people will find you. KaraGoldin.com, I'm assuming, at Kara Goldin everywhere. You write a lot on LinkedIn. Is there anywhere specific that you like people to look you up or follow? Or
I'm on Twitter, Kara Goldin. It's KaraGoldin. And that's on all of my social media handles. And I write a lot, like you said, on LinkedIn. And so, yeah, I'm trying to be as accessible as possible.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Founder's Mind. Check back later this week as Kara and I dive into a tangent episode. To make sure you don't miss any awesome wisdom from guests and stay up to date on the most recent episodes of the show, be sure to visit thefoundersmind.com. You can also follow along on social at The Founder's Mind. And last but not least, thank you to Roy Matz for the music on this show and his dope editing skills that make The Founder's Mind possible. Until next time, take care.
In a world going through all of this insanity, and try to bring new ideas, make them a reality. Illuminate in the thoughts, make it a priority to implement what you learn. What you get is what you be. In a world full of noise, hard to find that clarity to try to lead subtly, never full of vanity, and try to change something small or try to change humanity. Power forward through the dark. Founder's mind is what you see. Founder's mind is what you see.